Hi, so it's William Evans again, and I am talking to you about the multi-dimensional data management framework. And we're specifically running through version 7, right? And caveat up front, I use Christian material, so if that's not your thing, then best dial out now. Otherwise, you can always watch for interest's sake. Cool. Um, so we've done resources. We've spoken about the data. We've done alignment to understand the information value chain, procedures, fulfillment, process, and we're now doing information. Now, most companies would think information is like the most important, but information gets its context from process. So while there's no context, that information is dangerous at best, uh, and even worse if you don't have that context, right? Business people assume that you understand what that process is, but the reality is you actually need to find out which process is putting data into which systems and in which data flows, etc. Don't just assume, right? You need to understand exactly what's taking place. Right. So with the concept of information, we need to discuss the meanings. Now, there are multiple meanings, multiple versions of thinking. And some say it's the same thing, some say it's not. I have two very basic, simple meanings, right? The reality is data as stuff. In other words, how fast, how far, where does it go, where do I store it, what bandwidth do I need for it? All of that data as stuff, which means I don't care what it means, right? That is outside the conversation. So when I talk about data, I'm talking about there's some meaning and it's encapsulated in a structure and is stored or transferred via a medium. So, for example, I could be saying that I'm talking about these particular boxes that are being carried around, the data itself sitting in a Excel spreadsheet, whatever the case might have the contents of this in here, but there's meaning to it. There's specific meaning to that it's relating to something, right? It's encapsulated in structure. In this case, it would be the English language would be the structure that it's encapsulated in. It might even have certain measurement structures, etc. And it's stored, transferred via medium. It might be in an Excel spreadsheet or some other kind of system, right? That's data. When you talk about information, it's the same meaning. It's talking about the same things that are inside the boxes, but it's combined for an audience. So now I'm bringing data from different areas. I've got the label, I've got the number of things within the box, I've got what it's used for, and it is combined for an audience. I've specifically got an audience in mind. So if I'm taking these boxes somewhere, then the person receiving that, that's my audience. I will then give them the information. If it's a delivery note or something to that effect, that piece of information is useful to them because they are the audience of it. If it is going to be put out on shelves to be purchased from retail, then there is a new audience, and that audience is the retail buyer, right? Or the actual shopper. And then there is different sets of information that's important, or different sets of meanings that's combined for an audience. What are we combining? We're combining pieces of data, right? But actually, we don't really interested in the data. We're interested in this meaning. That meaning needs to be true at the data level so that I can use it at an information level. And again, it comes down to context because it's for a purpose. So when I create information, I'm not just saying I want it for the shoppers. I'm saying that information is for the shoppers and it's for health purposes. In other words, I'm going to have on it the information I'm talking about would be the expiry date, for example, or the sell by and the due by and the best by and the expiry dates on those particular cans of whatever. So there's a purpose. So that's the difference between data and information. That's why I keep it as simple as possible, so anybody can get it. If you go into the site multidimensional uh, uh, thinkers.com, you will be able to find this video as well. Click on it, and it will then play, and it plays a whole explanation around the first pieces of insights around data and information, how it works, right? Cool. So going back up here, how do we work with information supernaturally? Well, again, all of this information, one of the problems that we have is AI can do all the data things with prediction and all the rest of it, but AI is not outside of time. God is. So if you want to work with God outside of time, supernaturally, you've got to do it His way. He has a way of doing this, but He's the one who has to be in charge of it. So we're going to run through, I've got another document that we'll talk our way through, and then I'll make these available for you. All right. Ask God for counsel and might. And I think you're probably sitting in your mind thinking, oh, I know what that's about. I think you're going to be in for a really interesting surprise when we actually go through the document and the details, right? Um, right. So we've got these two definitions. And let me make it a little bit bigger so everybody can see it on the screen. Okay, control, which if we look here, is the management. Management, control, is directionless without information. So it needs information to be able to make any kind of tactical decisions, right? Or strategic for that matter. Right. Control is directionless without information, but to understand control, you must first understand counsel and might. So the key definition is the word meaning. However, as soon as everyone's views are valid, there is no longer a single source of truth, and the purpose of information is to lie to yourself and deceive yourself into believing and thereby convincing your selected audience that information proves your chosen point of view. And so long as you have sufficient in the room that share your point of view, it must be true. This is where we are in the world at the moment, right? Everybody's views seem to be true. Well, there's a challenge with that, but we'll get to that. And seeing as the tenure of the average person, especially the executive level, is very short, their mistakes never catch up with them, and them and those living within business bear the brunt of the failures. You get a CEO, CIO comes in, he's there for 2-3 years, he makes all sorts of changes, looks all good, etc. He walks away 2 years later. There's massive failures because of the things that he implemented or didn't implement, or things like that. Or when he just made a sudden change, put the business into shock, and then he left. These challenges are often done by this level, which they can do because they're the executive, they can do, but they do it based on the fact that they've got information. Now, that information is not always information that they've been given internally, sometimes it's externally. But nevertheless, they will make those decisions, right? People within the business remaining, they're the ones who have to live through the challenges. So the important thing to remember here, okay, the key definition is the word meaning. However, as soon as everyone's views are valid, there's no longer a single source of truth, and the purpose of information is no longer to get to the truth because there isn't a single source of truth. And the only way that you would use it is just to lie to yourself, deceive yourself into believing, and thereby convincing your selected audience that the information proves your chosen point of view. And so long as you have sufficient in the room that share that point of view, it must be true. And this is where we find ourselves, right? So the first thing most managers will ask is, who wants to know? And most of the reasons why who wants to know is I need to limit certain information. And sometimes there's a valid security risk reason for not allowing certain information to go to other areas. But often it's political. I don't want so and so to know that because I am busy preparing this presentation over here, and I don't want them to have a heads up on that because if they have a heads up on that, then they will present their thing in that way, and then I'm not going to be able to get my budget increase. And unfortunately, this is the kind of political nonsense that takes place. And it takes place because we choose to put the money ahead of the work. We've moved our center from delivering a service just because we love people and want the best for them to how can we make sure that we have the most money out of everything. The minute you take your eyes off other people and loving them, it all goes wrong. All right, so how do we fix this? Ask God for counsel and might. It means that you never start with the end in mind. So whereas I might be trying to prove a point here with my information, here I'm not trying to start with trying to prove anything. All right. Nor do you consider the audience. Nor, in other words, I'm not going to hide certain information because this is this audience, unless it's security related and things like that need to be protected. But if it's nothing like that, if it's internal and it's allowed to be a thing to be shared, you should not be considering the audience, right? Nor are you influenced to please them, nor to drive them away. This seems strange, but actually, you know what? People play so many games and they take on the position of God. They choose their own counsel, their own group of people, and they throw their weight around through their own might. Right? If you are going to work supernaturally, you have got to ask God for his counsel and his might, which means you cannot play this game. You just can't. So you never start with the end in mind. You don't consider your audience, and you're not influenced to please or drive away. Right? There is no place for trying to add some spin to the information, nor to choose a carefully selected uh, words. Choose a set of carefully selected words to accompany the truth that seeks to mislead through subtle wordplay and intended ambiguity. God will have nothing to do with lies and deception. If you go down this route, you are on your own. You will not have any supernatural protection. No. If you're a non-Christian, well, Satan quite happily let you have your way. If you're a Christian, right, if you are a child of God and God is not supporting you, you must know you are wide open for Satan. You may choose to just let you have your way for a while and he'll wait until all the chips are on the table and everything counts, and this time it's got to work, and he'll rip the rug out from underneath you. Do not play in Satan's kingdom. God will have nothing to do with lies and deception. You cannot give something to God that's got lies and deception in it, right? So if you want to work supernaturally, you have to set aside all forms of politics, manipulation, lobbying, and any other form of twisting the truth, including this warning, right? I'm going to show you where that warning is. It is in the book of Isaiah, and it's chapter 5, and it's this section here. I've actually copied it out, which I'm allowed to do because it's the King James Version, the old King James Version, which is outside of copyright. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil. In other words, you changed your definitions and put darkness for light and light for darkness. Your purposes are not right. You switched your purposes. What you call light is darkness. What it used to be, you've changed things over time. And put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. You're pretending something's nice. This speaks so much to marketing. You call it sweet, but you give them bitter, right? Hidden little clauses within things that bite people once they get themselves into a situation whereby they bought your product or whatever. This, why does it say woe to them? Okay, I'll show you in a minute. Woe unto them that are wise in their own eyes. If you think that your answer is right, if you think that the truth that you bringing forth is the truth, right? And you think that you're prudent in your own sight, if you do this, you are blind. Nobody can correct you. Nobody can help you. Nobody can stop you from going off the rails and damaging and destroying yourself and potentially others with you. Woe unto them that are mighty to drink wine, right? In other words, you get yourself all drunk, and that's not a good sign. But it's also people who go out drinking to try and control other people, whether it's to try and extract some kind of something that you can use, or whether it's trying to flatter people to get what you want, and men of strength to mingle strong drink. So you think that you're so clever and strong because the way that you can drink multiple drinks and you can mingle them, right? Which justify the wicked for reward. In other words, you know somebody's done something wrong, but you go and stand up and you say, no, they've done everything right. But the reason why is because somebody says, listen, you're not going to get this deal unless you let that guy off the hook, or he's allowed to do that if so and so. All of these things, God's got nothing. He steps right out of it, and you're on your own. And take away the righteousness of the righteous from him. This is trying to blame somebody and cause them hurt, right? When they've done nothing wrong. Now, what happens to these people? Therefore, as the fire devoureth the stubble, and the flame consumeth the chaff, so their roots shall be as rottenness, and their blossom shall go up as dust, because they have cast away the law of the Lord of hosts, and despised the word of the Holy One of Israel. Remember, we spoke about this last time. Israel, we're not talking about the country Israel, we're talking about the promise given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And when Jacob wrestled with the angel and had his name changed to Israel, that was the promise. And that promise was for Jesus to come. And as a Christian, you believe in Jesus, therefore you are part of Israel. Right? Again, not the country Israel, but Israel, the promise, and of course the promise people eventually will live in the country of Israel, but there will also be everywhere else. But I digress on that, and make sure that your focus is on this. If you as a Christian are doing any of these things, God is not with you. Satan will happily let you win until all your chips are on the table, until you have got everything invested, and then he will cash it in and he is allowed to rip everything out from underneath you. All right. Does this mean that the world is just not going to accept you? Yeah, that's right. They won't. Does this mean that they will attack you and not like you? Yeah, they won't. Does this mean that they will overlook you for promotion because you're not somebody that they can count on because they want people that they can control? Yep, they won't. Yes, yes, they will. They will definitely overlook it. But you see, if you're going to give this to God, you're going to give it to God. I'm going to show you why you want to as we go through this, right? So let's talk about counsel first of all. The first encounter, the Bible, first encounter of the word counsel. The first time we encounter, let's put it that way, the first time we encounter the word. Sorry, I really shouldn't be editing this while we're talking, but anyway, the word counsel in the Bible is provided by someone who had no comprehension of how God works. Now, if this person has no comprehension of how God works, why would you want to listen to their version of the word counsel and what they are using as counsel? This person wanted to create a quick fix. By the way, quick fixes, a quick fix will automatically change the strategic direction. It'll mess it up. You don't want quick fixes. You want to do things properly. But wanted to create a quick fix to what he saw as a physical problem. And this is your first problem that you run into. You see, God doesn't work with spiritual, physical problems. He works with spiritual problems that then manifest themselves as physical realities. He makes the change in the spiritual place that causes the physical change. What people do is they try and change the physical, and actually it doesn't work because the spiritual still overrides it, but for a short time, it looks like it's okay. Right? So he sees this physical problem and he decides, I'm going to make this change. God, on the other hand, knows how we actually work, and he will not interfere if we do not ask for his guidance. And this is so, so important. God loves you. He respects you. He will not interfere. If you do not ask him, he's not going to guide you, right? Now, Moses made the mistake of listening to his father-in-law and not asking God. He also allowed the power of autosuggestion to work in his mind instead of discussing the matter with God. Have a look at how a one-sided presentation is made for the formation of hierarchy. Okay, hierarchy. Then, so that you understand, we're talking about the concept of hierarchy. And that formation of hierarchy was to exclude God rather than servanthood and partnership with the spiritual realm. You see, while people stood in the long line, okay, under in better in the elements, the weather, etc., waiting for their turns to talk to Moses, okay, they had to come to terms with themselves. They're sitting there waiting. It's a long line. It's a very long line. And what have they got to do? Just to sit there, right? And they sit, they've got to come to terms with themselves and with those who were their adversaries. I'm finding a lot of errors. And God would work in their hearts, and they would leave the line and return to their tents. Okay, so in other words, that's how God works. He's sitting in the line, he's sitting in the waiting room. Right? If somebody waits all the way until they get to the front, then they've got something that they need to deal with. Otherwise, it gets dealt with in the line. But if you take the line away, you take away God working in the hearts of people, because now they can get a quick answer. How do you get a quick answer? But when an answer can be given quickly, which is what hierarchy achieves, hearts are not molded and grown. Only the physical world is addressed. This is not God's will. But he will not interfere. He will let people learn their hard lessons the hard way. Look at where we are now. You just need to look around in the mess that we're in at the moment. It's just been a lot of quick fixes for a very long time. Exodus 18:13 to 24. Now you'll notice I've got some parts here which are in black, bold italics. That's not part of the scripture reference, right? But it is an explanation to help you unpack what in fact is going on here, right? And you need to see what takes place there. And it came to pass on the morrow that Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood by Moses from morning unto the evening. And when Moses' father-in-law saw all that he did to the people, he said, What this thing thou doest to the people? Why sittest thyself alone? And all the people stand by thee from morning unto evening. Remember, we spoke about the fact that in the line, God is busy, right? But all he can see is that these people are sitting around waiting. And Moses said unto his father-in-law, Because the people come unto me to inquire of God. When they have a matter, they come unto me, and I judge between one and another, and I do make know the statutes of God and his laws. Moses' father-in-law said unto him, The thing that thou doest is not good. Thou wilt surely wear away. So this is autosuggestion, right? And that's introduced. A poison dart that would play in Moses' subconscious until he went ahead with his father-in-law's plan. He never did ask God for his view on this, right? So he says, Thou wilt surely wear away. And he says it's not good. Who's saying it's not good? Well, the source of this is somebody who doesn't even know God, doesn't know how God works at all, looking at it just purely from a physical perspective. Okay. Thou shalt surely wear away, both thou and the people that with thee. So now there is a threat of failure to achieve what his father-in-law believed Moses' role was. So his father-in-law had decided, okay, Moses, you must be this kind of a role. Instead of thinking, okay, Moses, you're just a servant of God doing what God's telling you to. You now fitting within a role, right? And he's threatening him with failure because he's already determined that Moses must be failing at this job. Moses knew that he was just a servant of God, but his father-in-law portrayed Moses as a great and powerful man with a purpose of his own. That's not how Moses saw himself. That's how father-in-law saw, and that's why the father-in-law now brings all these other things up. For this thing is too heavy for thee, thou art not able to perform it thyself alone. Now Moses was doing just fine, partnering with God supernaturally, until he received this discouragement and disbelief from one who did not know the one true God, but was steeped in worship of many idols. Again, Moses did not take this discouragement to God to get redirection from God, but rather succumbed to wanting to please his father-in-law. Hearken now unto my voice. I will give thee counsel, and God shall be with thee. Moses' father-in-law, who does not know God, states that Moses must listen to him and has the audacity to speak for God by saying that God would be with Moses if Moses listened to his father-in-law's counsel. That's wrong. Clearly, how can he make that statement? And God shall be with thee. Be thou for the people to Godward, that thou mayest bring the causes unto God, and thou shalt teach them ordinances and laws, and shalt show them the way wherein they must walk, and the work that they must do. Now, Satan cannot be everywhere at once, and so the only way that Satan can control everything is to have everything in hierarchies, which can be controlled from above. This is how Satan tried to be like God. Satan had created hierarchies and trade in heaven after being cast down to earth. After being cast down to earth, he has been rebuilding all he did in heaven here on earth. Trade creates the haves and the have-nots, two people groups, right? The third of the angels that were cast down to earth were the haves who liked Satan's system. That's why they joined him. They honestly thought he was right. They had so much. The have-nots returned to the way God had heaven before. No trade. Everyone just gives out of love. All of heaven is watching to see how dark and evil everything becomes when you do not do things God's way. That's what we're watching. But we're not watching it alone. All of heaven is also watching. And the proof is Satan is actually just showing that his whole plan and everything actually is no good. So we see Moses' father-in-law explaining how a hierarchy must be designed. And this is what he says. Moreover, thou shalt provide out of all the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness. Now, this sounds really good by design, but we've all seen that once the structure is in place and well practiced and accepted, it is then that Satan introduces corruption and brings in people of his choice to fill those positions of power. Satan allows things to be started for good reasons, and then he corrupts them afterwards. Right? Be wary of that. Moreover, thou shalt provide out of all the people able men such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness, and place such over them to be rulers of thousands and rulers of hundreds, rulers of fifties, rulers of tens, and let them judge the people at all seasons. And it shall be that every great matter, no, great matter, these matters are now subjectively decided, and where there is corruption, there's no longer any need to escalate anything beyond those who are in control. Now, these great matters that we had this idea that these great matters would now be escalated, they don't get there. They don't come up because the corruption sits in the middle. They shall bring unto thee, but every small matter they shall judge. So now, again, that small matter is going to be subjective. And people who want to stay in control won't escalate. So shall it be easier for thyself, and they shall bear the burden with thee. If thou shalt do this thing, and God command thee so. Now, this is typical, right? The typical thing Satan does is after all this marketing that's been done so far, he steps back, absolves himself of any accountability, and tells Moses, through Moses' father-in-law, that there is a condition that this would work, that Moses would have to go and twist God's arm by showing that he, Moses, is not capable of doing what he, Moses, was perfectly capable of doing before Moses' father-in-law had started speaking. Continuing, if thou shalt do this thing and God command thee so, then thou shalt be able to endure, and all this people shall also go to their place in peace. Moses' father-in-law then re-emphasizes the benefits of doing things his suggested way. So Moses hearkened to the voice of his father-in-law and did all that he had said. Notice Moses does not ask God what God wants done. Now the temptation, this might seem, how did he do this? This happens in your workplace and in your life so often. And you don't even know, because Moses wasn't aware that this was taking place and was going to create all sorts of havoc for him and other people later. He did not know this. And if we don't take things to God, then we're going to have a problem. Now, we know we have to take things to God if it doesn't belong to us, right? If something doesn't belong to us, if it belongs to God, we have to go to God and say, God, is this okay? And so ownership becomes really important, right? The above describes why you do not want to use your own nor the counsel of others without first checking with God on the matter. Right? Thus, be wary of hierarchies. If possible, flatten structures. Remove the mid-level management where they have power bases and information to bribe and blackmail and control people. Jesus makes the following statement about Christians. Luke 22:24-27. And there was also strife among them, which of them should be accounted the greatest? And he, says Jesus speaking, said unto them, who is he talking to? Those who believe Jesus Christ is one God with God, God's word. What did Jesus say? The kings of the Gentiles exercise lordship over them. How do they do this? Through hierarchy. And they that exercise authority upon them are called benefactors, but ye not so. But he that is greatest among you, let him be as the younger, and he that is chief as he that doth serve. For whether greater, he that sitteth at meat, or he that serveth? Not he that sitteth at meat, meat means a meal, right? But I am among you as he that serveth. What Jesus does is he turns that whole hierarchy upside down. It's an upside down triangle of service. He is the greatest servant of all. We are all servants to one another. None of us is lording it over the other. The hierarchy doesn't work the way it's been implemented there. And then Jesus Christ modeled this too. John 13:3-17. Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he was come from God, and went to God, he riseth from supper, and laid aside his garments, and took a towel, and girded himself. After that he poureth water into a basin, and began to wash the disciples' feet, and to wipe with a towel wherewith he was girded. Then came he to Simon Peter, and Peter saith unto him, Lord, dost thou wash my feet? Jesus answered and said unto him, What I do thou knowest not now, but thou shalt know hereafter. Peter saith unto him, Thou shalt never wash my feet. Jesus answered him, If I wash thee not, thou hast no part with me. Simon Peter saith unto him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and head. Jesus saith unto him, He that is washed needeth not to save wash his feet, but is clean every whit, and ye are clean, but not all. In other words, you only need to wash your feet. If you're really clean, you don't need to wash your feet. Bear in mind they walked on dusty roads then. For he knew who should betray him. Therefore he said, You are not all clean. It's interesting. He even washes Judas's feet, the one who's going to betray him. So after he had washed their feet, and taken his garments, and was set down again, he said unto them, Know ye what I have done to you? Ye call me Master and Lord, and ye say, Well, for I am. If I then, Lord and Master, have washed your feet, ye also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that ye should do as I have done to you. Verily, verily, I say unto you, that the servant is not greater than his Lord, neither he that is sent greater than he that sent him. If ye know these things, happy are ye if ye do them. So when you choose counselors, be sure to choose many more of the humble and lowly and poor and of the little value in the eyes of mankind, and the type of work you do, than of those who have power, wealth, and influence, because only these, while not influenced by others, will be able to ensure that your information retains its true value. And this is the truth, guys. This is the truth. People who are poor and lowly, etc., to them, they don't have money, but they have truth and they have integrity and they actually retain it as best they can because they don't have much else, right? Yeah, you do get some people that are a bit shady. That is true. So that's why be careful. But if you find somebody is humble, they're unlikely to be shady, right? So, but certainly be careful of those with power and wealth and influence. We see too much of that today. But now that was counsel. Might is another story. If you want supernatural might to be involved, then you have to give whatever you are sorry, yeah, whatever you are doing to God. So you're going to give whatever you're doing, you've got to give it to God. And then ask Him to show you the truth. Remember, we're talking about information, right? You want Him to show you the truth. Now, what does this mean? Ownership is the first thing to address. If you want to work supernaturally, then there can only be one owner of that which you personally do and the contribution you personally make. You can't necessarily give something to the Lord if you are not working with it, right? If it's not something that you are doing, you can't give that to the Lord. You have to be the one directly involved, and it's your contribution. If you're accountable for something, you can certainly give that to God, right? If God owns all the components of whatever it is that we're talking about here, then the whole will work supernaturally at the right time and in the right way. You do not have control over time, and you do not have control over method. All right. I can tell you from personal experience that I have had absolutely massive, major, successful things that have happened that people have looked at and said, I don't know how that could have happened. And it's because I gave it to God. I gave it to God and allowed Him to direct me. And I can tell you something, guys, if you want to work supernaturally, this is the only way to do it. So, to get a clearer message, and go watch this Christian message for practical experience on how God works, right? It's called The Pineapple Story. It's a missionary's testimony on overcoming in life. And it's a YouTube link, right? That's the YouTube link there. So if you're watching the video, you can pause it. You can just type that in and watch it. If you go to the document because you happen to have access to it, then you can just click on it, right? Now, when we talk about might, God has a pattern for how He works. And I'm going to show you a table in a minute. Give me a sec. Got the cat mug today. God has a pattern of working. And then I've got a table below, and you can use this to see some examples, right? This pattern is as follows. God will give a person a vision, a dream, purpose. They might not know that vision, dream, or purpose top of mind. It's deep inside them, and it's still working its way out. They might be in that stage of life, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing and all the rest of it. They absolutely have a purpose. God doesn't make anybody without a purpose. But yeah, there are other entities on the planet, and I don't know what their purpose is, but anyway, God allows them to be around because they couldn't exist otherwise. So give a person, this is what God does, gives a person a vision, dream, or purpose, and He allows them to try to achieve it on their own and fail, and be rejected. It's really interesting when you look at the worked examples. Jesus never failed, right? And Daniel never failed. And both of these lived a life of prayer, right? So give a person a vision, dream, purpose, allow them to try to achieve it on their own and fail. That's your choice. If you want to try it on your own. Then after they've tried it and they've been rejected or they've failed, He humbles them until they stop trying to do it in their own strength. And if you're still in this phase and you're trying and you're trying and trying, you're failing, you need to get to the point of saying, you know what, Lord, I'm not going to try this anymore. This is now up to you. Now, why do I say don't try it? You know, there's that statement saying, well, if you keep trying to do the same thing the same way, then that's the definition of insanity. Right? Well, if you're a Christian and you're trying to do it without the Lord, well, you are trying to do something in Satan's kingdom without the Lord. Satan is allowed to stop you. If you don't have the Lord with you, Satan is allowed to stop you. And by the way, you can't bring the Lord into something that you're doing by saying, yeah, Jesus, just come and help me do this. No, no, no. It works the other way around. You give it to God and then you ask Him how He wants to do it. And then you listen to Him. And if you bump your head here, He's going to humble you until you stop it. Okay, until you stop trying to do it in your own strength. Then He's going to cause you to wait. Or God's going to make you wait. But He's also going to wait until you properly give the method and outcome to God. When you say, Lord, I'm going to release this to you, I don't even have a picture of exactly how this should look, but can you just lead me and guide me? And how you want to do it is great. You know, I might have certain limitations I've noticed. It's an amazing thing. There's always enough time to do something twice. Why is there always enough time to do something twice, but everyone wants you to rush through it the first time? So they give you these short, tight deadlines. It always fails, never hits the mark properly because people do what? They cut down on quality. And when you cut down on quality, what's the first thing that fails? You see, when people cut down on quality, they cut down on testing, they cut down on checks. Ultimately, the data fails. They build a perfect system with all the nice pipes and, then go to the pipes and the water analysis. The water can flow through it. Oh, it's brilliant plumbing. Guys, yes, we've got this all perfect. What they haven't done is haven't made provision for the different colors of the water staying separate. Colors of water is the actual data itself that's going to flow through the system. No, no, we don't care what happens with the data that flows through the system, so long as we give you a nice system that works. And so you get this delivery of the system, but when you start to use it, it scrambles your data, it messes things up. Well, that's the kind of thing that happens when people are rushed to try and deliver to certain timelines. If you're going to do things with God, you're going to need to say, guys, I'm going to get this done at the pace I can, in the way that I need to. I'm going to do it properly. And if that's not good enough for you, then I need to find another company because I want to succeed and I'm not going to succeed trying to rush things. And you need to explain that to them. You're welcome to show them these videos. So wait until they properly give the method and outcome to God. Then he's going to put them into a lowly position so they can learn all they really need to know from the inside out. This is what God does. He puts you on the inside out because he wants you to be solid. He wants you to be a, a, a strong muscle with all the fibers of the muscle, not just something that looks nice and big and strong from outside. It's actually just full of fat. Right? He needs you to be solid all the way through. To do that, he's going to teach you everything from the inside out. So to do that, he needs to put you into a lowly position so that you can learn all those things that you need to. What does this mean? You cannot do this if you are ambitious, because ambitious people chase positions and they chase money and they chase the ladder of I'm going to get into that position and I'm going to get into that position and and all the time they're just skimming the surface of their learning. They're never solid. They never understand enough. And then all at the end of the day they can do is try and fight to keep their job, whereby they've got to have people underneath them that can tell them what's going on. But when they sit in a meeting and they're supposed to give an answer, they haven't got a clue. And that's when it starts to come out. And it's the hardest thing to watch is when people get to that level and they just fail. They just fail again, again, and again. And eventually, they're asked to either move out or they get demoted or whatever, because, this situation is just not going to work for them. Then you've got create situations. Then what he's going to do is he's going to create situations where only he can help. Now, this is what I call the wave. I love waves. This is waiting for the wave. Right? I'm learning everything I can. I'm waiting for God, and he's leading me and guiding me, etc. But I can sense that he's about to do something supernatural. And I love it. I so love it. It's absolutely amazing what God does. And he comes out of the blue with he orchestrates events, conversations. And the final set of that is that he puts you into a placement. He places you in a place, in a position that you would never have thought possible. But he's prepared you all along here to be able to be in that position. And he then makes sure and when you go into that and he's put you there, you can't be moved from it because he's the one that put you there. You didn't put yourself there. Right? And he also knows who you are, knows how you're made, knows what's best for you, knows how you tick. Because he knows all those things, he knows that that placement's going to be really good for you and you're going to actually get a lot of uh, goodness and joy, etc. out of that. It doesn't end there because He then tests you from time to time, and he's going to leave you to flounder because in that test, you'll only be able to stand that test if you um, do one or more of these. If you do not give God the credit for what He's done, right? When that test comes along, you're on your own and you're going to fail and things are going to fall apart for you. If you become proud of the successes, so, oh yeah, I'm so good because of this, etc. These two go a bit hand in hand, but you can give God the credit and still be proud, right? You should be focusing on other people and their joy and their thing, not looking at yourself, right? If you disobey God's commandments, He's absolutely no longer involved. The moment you disobey a commandment, He's no longer involved. If you go and you do something wrong, say now you've stolen an idea or you perjured something or whatever the case is, you need to go and you need to go to whoever's in authority and say, listen, this is what I've done. I've done this, it's wrong. And I know I'm in trouble for it, and that's fine. I'll take my punishment. I want to fix this. I want to get it right because it's more important for you to fix this so that God is in what you're doing than it is for you to succeed. Remember, you're not trying to drive this. You're not trying to get to something. If you become covetous or ambitious, He is not involved because now you're trying to drive this ship. You're not letting Him become the solution, right? Or if you take over in your own strength, he steps out. Now it was really interesting. I get visions and dreams and things like that. One day I had this vision of myself in a tree somewhere in Africa, and I was looking down at a river. The river was probably must have been maybe 500 meters across, flowing fairly okay, but I was in this tree and I was looking down at the water. I was quite high up. I was looking down at the water, and there were so many people in the water, and they were swimming frantically. They were swimming and swimming over each other, pushing each other down to etc. And then I saw myself down there, and and I realized that the Lord was sitting next to me. I said, Lord, what am I doing? He says, I don't know. I said, well, that's crazy. He says, yeah. He says, you're not supposed to be doing that. I said, well, what am I supposed to be doing? And he pointed to the other side of the river. There's this guy. He's on a raft, sitting with an umbrella over his head. He's got this nice cool drink in his hand. And he's on his little deck chair and he's floating down the river. He says, that's what you're supposed to do. I said, but Lord, he's doing nothing. He says, exactly. I said, I don't understand. How can you want me to be doing nothing? He said, the river's doing all the work. He's just learned to rest in it. He's not trying to fight. He's not trying to make it do what he wants. He's not trying to control anything. He's allowing me to carry him. And he says, my Holy Spirit will lead you and guide you. But if you start going down this route of all these other things here, um, you're going to start failing and it'll catch up to you. And then you can't sleep at night because this happened and this guy said that, and you're not sure if that's going to work anymore. And these things, etc. You don't have to worry about any of those things. You don't have to worry about a single thing if it's God's and you're letting Him drive. You don't. And you know what? If you must also remember something, if you're giving things to God, um, the company is not employing you. God is employing you, right? And you can't be let go by a company because you can only be redeployed by your Father in heaven. There are so many companies in the world. You do not have to hang on to something that is burning you, and actually that's not supposed to be where you're supposed to be in the first place. Satan loves to hold people in a place that they're not supposed to be. He can suck the life out of them. He can give them a joyless, horrible experience. Now, yes, you are supposed to grow spiritually, so God is going to put you in situations whereby you're going to have some tough times with people. Ask the Lord what He's supposed to do. If He says stay there, you stay there. God takes His time and shuts down those who are His own children if they become proud or arrogant or ambitious, which is simply wanting to run ahead of or in a direction God is not calling you into. Either way, as a Christian, you'll be hurt. Stay humble. Only when you have been prepared God's way will you be lifted to a position of might, because only then can you effectively work against what Satan is doing. Those who do not belong to God but have rejected Jesus Christ, having a full understanding of who Jesus Christ really is, because many have been indoctrinated, they do not know who Jesus really is. They only know what they have been told. They've not gone and searched this out for themselves. And I encourage you to do so. If you've just been told about him, go and find out for yourself. Such people will succeed in this world only by breaking God's commandments. You see, if a Christian keeps God's commandments, he can succeed. If a non-Christian tries to succeed by keeping God's commandments, it's going to fail. Satan will let it happen for a short while, but then he's going to rip the rug out from under him because he's allowed to. They're not covered by the blood of Jesus. But if they want to succeed, they're going to have to do things Satan way. And how's that? By breaking God's commandments. And by finding and corrupting those around them to do the same. You know, one of the things that people should realize is that there's a slippery slope. And people get drawn in. Initially, it just seems quite nice and all the rest of it. And it's a nice group of people and so on and so forth. And then you start to realize that these people are actually up to some not so good things. You get out of there as soon as you can, right? Because once a person is affected by Satan, they live in fear and torment. He will torment them at night. He will give them torment in their souls. And they have to go and find somebody that they can corrupt. They have to do it. They are driven spiritually in fear and torment, and various things go wrong in their life and all the rest of it, just because they're not finding and corrupting other people. It looks good from the outside, but it is terrifying to them. And I know what it is like to live with these things. It's horrifying. You can't get away from them. Only Jesus can get you away from them. I know and can encourage them to turn to Jesus because He can truly save them and give them peace. He did that for me, and trust me, He can do it for you guys. Now, I'm not going to go through this because this is quite long and we've been going for a while, but you can scroll through the document, but I'll say sufficient that everything that we mentioned over here, 1 to 8, at least 1 to 7, is listed down the side. And then I've taken a number of people and I've explained the same process so that you can see how God does this in other people's lives. Moses was the ruler of Israel. Joseph, the ruler over all Egypt. Daniel, the ruler over all Babylon. John was the writer of the vision of Revelation, and of course, an apostle. Peter was the leading apostle to the Jews, and Paul, who was Saul, the leading apostle to the Gentiles, right? And then I've broken it down so you can actually track their lives and see how God actually worked through them. And let me get my face out the picture. And I'll scroll down so you can pause it, right? So make it a little bit smaller so you can see this. So there's give a person a vision, dream, purpose, known to them or not. Well, in this case, um, Peter had no idea of his purpose. He just thought he was a fisherman. Allow them to try to achieve it on their own. Interestingly enough, Daniel was the only one who never tried to do anything on his own. Everything he did it in prayer. Humble them until they stop trying to do it in their own strength. Daniel never needed to be humbled. Wait until they properly give the method and outcome to himself. Daniel waited on God in prayer. And this one, put them into a lowly position so they can learn all they really need to know from the inside out. You can see all those examples. You can read them there. By the way, I've got you here because it would be interesting to track your own life, right? Then we've got create situations where only He, that is God, can help. And you can see again those. And finally, let me get that out the way there. Orchestrate events and conversations so that the person can be put into placement. And then you can see the actual outcome of their lives once that took place. Well, guys, the reality of information is going to come back to this first part here. Make sure that you get the meaning right. Make sure that you are not changing your definitions, that you are not changing good for evil and evil for good, that you're making sure that you're not relying on things and thinking that you're wise in your own eyes, right, and prudent in your own sight. Don't get involved in these kind of things of justifying the wicked for reward in that, right? Because you're absolutely going to be taken down. And it won't be initially. Satan loves to let you climb to the top of the ladder, and then when you get to the top, he rips the whole thing out. Why does he do it that way? Because he wants you to waste as much of your life as possible. He doesn't want you to actually achieve anything of any real, true significance. And so if he lets you think that you're doing right, think that you're doing right, think that you're doing right, and so you keep on going, etc., and eventually rips it out. We've got nothing, but you've also lost so much time. You're older now, all of those things are a problem. Don't go there. Get your taxonomies right. Make sure that you're running off the right sources. Right, guys, so that's the end of the training video on information. And remember, the way that you do this supernaturally is you ask for counsel and might. You ask God for counsel and might. Don't ask others. Be careful. There are other entities out there that will promise you this, but trust me, it will cost you everything and you will absolutely wish you never went down that route. I can attest to that as well. Well, fantastic. Have fun. And we'll cover the next one next time.